Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, and we're going to talk about a bearish scenario, okay? And the reason we're going to talk about this is because I got a people that commented on my recent video about, okay, well, there's a good chance we'll head to the 20-week SMA at some point in the coming weeks, and someone commented on the fact that I said, hey, well, what if we don't hold it? And then their comment was, well, what's the theoretical lowest price you could see Bitcoin going? And the way that I always look at lowest price thresholds, like anyone in crypto, who's been investing in Bitcoin for a long time, we know that historically speaking, the 200-week moving average is our support. Okay, I mean, it was our support in the pits of the bear market in 2015. It was our support in 2018. It was our support again over here in 2020. And so historically, that has been our support level. Now, do I think we're going to immediately go to the 200-week moving average? Absolutely not. Right? Absolutely not. There's a definitely a high probability that we don't. But in terms of not operating in a deterministic way, which we try to avoid here, we just want to look at the implications of what would that look like, and what could the journey to that level look like under the most bearish of circumstances. And that might entail, something happening with Bitcoin, some very bad piece of news or something that we got to get worked out, or I don't know, government. We don't really know what it could be. But we just want to take a pragmatic look and say, well, what would happen in the event of a most bearish scenario? So if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. So let's take a look. Well, one thing I think that's interesting, and obviously everyone's a little bit bearish right now. We've been coming down for a couple weeks. Not the first time in the bull market that we've come down a couple weeks. Not the first time that we've had a correction this bad. This one's only 26% or so far. This one over here was around 31%. So this isn't even the worst correction that we've had, right? This is not even the worst correction that we've had. But if we draw our typical line on a chart and sort of just look at this bull market and how quickly it moved up, we can see that we have lost some momentum. Okay, we definitely have lost some momentum here. Basically getting squeezed up here against the regression band. If you zoom in on the regression band, let's do that. So if you zoom in on the regression band, you can see we never had a weekly close in it. We had wicks that went into it, no weekly closes in it. And so if we were to zoom back out and say, well, what could happen under, say, a bearish scenario, and where would that theoretically take us? Well, first of all, I feel like the worst case scenario on a weekly time frame, and I would say this at any point in Bitcoin's history, whether you ask me today, a year from now, 5 years from now, I'll probably just say the 200-week moving average. At some point that'll change. Of course, at some point we'll probably go below the 200-week and really have some time below it. I mean, we did close below it over here, but it was just for 1 week. But what would it look like? Okay, well, the 200-week moving average today is only at 11,658. But you should recognize it is moving up relatively quickly. Okay, so it's at it's at like 11.7K today, but note that it wasn't that long ago that it was at 11.4. A week before that it was 11.28. So it is moving up by $100 to $200 a week right now. And if this continues to move up, which it will, if this continues to move up, we just want to look at a bearish scenario. So the bearish scenario would be to say, okay, well, what if we assume that there will be similarities between what happened in 2019 and what might happen now? What if we assume there are similarities? And what I mean by that is, what if we assume it did the exact same thing? Now, the one thing we can probably take to the bank is that whatever happens today will not be like 2019. Okay, that's probably one thing we can take to the bank, because history does not often identically repeat itself. But if it did, we basically dropped about 72% over 259 days. So it was a relatively slow bleed. Tons of people accumulated in this range, and then ultimately we had a capitulation, and then we got back on course and went on a major run. What would that look like if it happened again? What would that look like if it happened again? And again, this would be like the most bearish scenario. Well, if we had a 72% drop over 259 days, that would actually bring Bitcoin down to about $18,000, which seems ridiculous. And it's hard to imagine Bitcoin going to that level. And I think the likelihood of it going to that level is relatively low. But it just gives you an idea of what people who bought here in 2019 at the peak, it gives you an idea of what they experienced, because they did not see immediate upside. It seemed like we might get it right here, right? But we didn't. And it just sort of slowly bled for a while. And we had some phases where altcoins did really well, but it just sort of slowly bled. We started to move up here, and then we had the capitulation, and then we got completely back on track and did this crazy stuff. Okay, so pretty interesting history. Now, if it were to do something like that, what's interesting is that, if we were to simply extend the 200-week moving average out on on the sort of the current line that it's going, it would actually match up basically perfectly, basically perfectly with that level. And another thing that's interesting is if we do something like that, and then we sort of zoom out, I almost guarantee you that we'll be looking at something like this, or every people will be looking at something like this to say, all right, this was our general accumulation band. Let me try to fix that a little bit. But, basically the idea of, okay, this was our general accumulation band here, or our general uptrend channel of the entire cycle, or or whatever you want to call it. And what's interesting, let's suppose that it did do something like that. So let's take that bar pattern from the top, and then let's just take it all the way over here, and then we're gonna shift that there. So we're gonna try to get it at the top. Let me see if I can get it right at the. Actually, let me shift it over a bit, because this top occurred here. So really 259 days. I guess I should actually be drawing it, the 259 days from right there. Okay, so that's more or less what it would look like. So this is not drawn exactly, but something like that. Okay, you get the general idea. 259 days. That's what it would look like if you put the bar pattern on it, from 2019. And what's interesting too, if you were to extend this out, if you were to extend the regression line out loosely, it would look something like that. Okay, something like that, where it sort of comes over, and then these would continue going up as well. Now, obviously, it's not going to repeat exactly the same way. If it did, then that would imply about a $300,000 Bitcoin if it went down and then went up, basically recovered by the same amount. So what could happen if we did go into, say, a bearish scenario like that, would be instead of saying going back up to those levels, maybe it would be something like this, where it comes down, we test the 200 week, we then go back up and do something like this, and then maybe come down and continue along our journey. This would be, for me, this would be like the most bearish scenario for Bitcoin. I'm certainly not going to say that this is going to happen, because I really don't know what'll happen, in the immediate short term. We could go back up to 64K and put in a new all-time high next week, for all I know. But I just want people to be aware that even my most bearish scenario still puts us at six figures in the not so distant future, relatively speaking. Okay, it doesn't put us at six figures next month. It doesn't put us at six figures, in 3 months. But it does. Even the bearish scenario, even the most bearish scenario I can envision, would still put us at a six-figure Bitcoin probably within the next 18 months. Which is kind of crazy when you think of like, okay, this is a bearish scenario, and it still seems like it would actually work out relatively well. Now, arguably, this type of analysis, should not necessarily be taken seriously. I'm just dubiously extrapolating prior moves, and we're just sort of talking about where we currently are. We know that Bitcoin's extended. We could even just move sideways for a while potentially, if we don't come back down. But anyways. Hopefully I didn't ruffle too many feathers. We're just we're just sort of looking at all the different conditions. I think the likelihood of what I just talked about is probably not very likely, but at the same time, if we don't look at all possible solutions, the bull cases and the bear cases, and we always look at the bull cases. If we don't look at all possible solutions, then we're not necessarily prepared for what might happen. So if you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. Also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. We also have the premium list at intothecryptoverse.com. Make sure you guys subscribe. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Bye.